Welcome to the Daring to Succeed podcast. Today, I'm joined by Gabrielle Ferguson, an executive coach and leadership strategist with 10 plus years in HR and talent development. Gabs, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's going to be, I think, a really interesting topic today. Gabs and I were kind of talking about all the different things we wanted to share with you. And we kind of landed on the topic of a 10 out of 10 client, which might sound a little weird that we're like out here talking about the perfect person that we want to work with. But if you bear with us, it's kind of more about the combined success of the coachee and the coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, Gabs, you kind of have a lot of thoughts on that. Do you want to kind of jump in and blow that out a little bit on why we think this is such an important topic?
Absolutely. And I think, it was so nice, our conversation. There was so many directions that we took, but this is one that I don't think is spoken about enough from either perspective, as the coach or as the coachee. And so a 10 out of 10 client relationship for me is incredibly important. And I guess we'll define what we mean by that as well. But it's important because the number one thing that makes a successful coaching engagement, coaching relationship is rapport, is the number one thing. And it's what I would recommend to anybody. If you are a trained, certified coach, as we are, because FYI, many are not. But if you are a trained, no shade, but it's true. If you are a trained, certified coach, at the end of your coaching program, you get the certificate and you are trained to help anybody. You've got a fundamental and foundational level of skills. Hopefully there's some natural talent in there as well. And you have a range of tools to help people with their issues and help people progress and move forward. And I know from our couple of conversations now how much, that lights us up inside and how much we enjoy it. And so one of the hardest things you can do, I think, as a coach, working coach in business, is choose. You have to choose a specialty. Some people call that a niche. You have to choose who you're going to work with and why. And I don't know about you, Julianna, but I found that choice and that concept of choosing one of the hardest things about starting my business and working for myself, because the kind of person I am, I want to help everyone and I'm interested in loads of different things and lots of different kinds of challenges and different kinds of people. And it's difficult because you are trained to help anybody, but you do have to choose, particularly when you're starting off, so you can build your business and build your expertise and reputation in one area. And I think that's really important. And so linking that with this notion of that I think we need to patent it, to be honest. There's 10 out of 10 clients, we need to get the intellectual property on that. Building rapport is really important. You could have discovery calls where you get to test out the coach and ask them questions and share about your challenge with 50 different coaches that are all trained to help you. But the difference maker is, one, probably a little bit of their style and their ethos and their approach. But two is, who do I feel comfortable with to really go there?
Yeah.
And really share and open up. My clients, and I'm sure yours do, they're trusting me and they're letting me into their world. They're opening up about their past, about their vulnerabilities, about their insecurities, which is crucial for us to do the work together that we need to do. But the level of rapport and trust has to be there. People have to feel understood. And for me, that's what makes a 10 out of 10 client. It's that give and take. You're trusting me and we've got the rapport, and I'm confident my expertise and skills are exactly what you need. So that 10 out of 10 is kind of that perfect match, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's a few things that you mentioned there that I want to kind of pop back on.
Mm,
Um, One is that concept of expertise and training, where definitely it helps so much having a coach who's fully trained, because right now in the world, anybody can call themselves a coach. There is, whether you're certified or not, there's not really any sort of, it's not like a doctor, right? Where
un-
you need to be
unfortunately, yeah,
registered.
there
And
isn't still, I think, one overarching accrediting body globally or even within countries, which
yeah,
I'm hoping that will change at some point to really legitimize what we do. At the moment, you have quite a few different certifying bodies that offer programs. Um, but it is frustrating when you've taken the time and the investment to get certified by a rigorous accrediting body, and someone else can call themselves the same title as you, and they did, a 10-minute LinkedIn learning or whatever, yeah, it can be frustrating.
I think the type of training and experience also matters depending on like what you're looking for in a coach. So I haven't actually completed my formal certification yet, but I have 20 years of experience coaching people in a corporate environment,
Mm-hmm,
right? Where those are kind of things to look for, where the certification process is, as Gabs mentioned, quite intensive, both in time and money.
hmm,
And some of it is you have to pass certain markers to be able to pass that certification.
hmm,
So, especially for someone like me who's newer as a coach outside of corporate,
hmm,
um, may not have that immediately, but you can look for other things like what is their work experience? What industries have they worked with? Who else have they actually helped reach goals? Maybe you ask for, like, hey, can I talk to somebody who has actually been helped by you? Because then you can kind of gauge how real is this experience? Is this a person who really can deliver on the thing that I need them to help me with? Or is
hmm.
this just another influencer out there who's trying to kind of get out there and sell all this stuff? Because we know right now the world is pretty much bombarded by everyone trying to do their side hustle, which is understandable. But if your career is on the line, you need to do yourself the justice of making sure that the person that you're hiring to help you is the right person for you and has the qualifications that you're comfortable with.
I think it's doing your due diligence, isn't it?
Yeah.
The way that you would when you hire
You're
someone to
hiring a
work on your
lawyer.
yeah, or someone to work on your car. You would
Yep,
do your due
yep,
diligence. And that's why I think we've spoken about this previously. I would say so much of my business still, nearly 3 years down the line, it's referrals.
yep.
It's referrals and word of mouth from people, which I think says something to the experience that people have had. No ego, but people won't say, have a chat with Gabs and send my email address if they weren't confident to vouch for you. And
Exactly.
that goes a long way to building that trust as well, because again, you said it really well. We're in an age on the internet and social media. Anybody can say anything.
Yep.
How do you know the testimonials aren't made up? And they just have crafted the perfect testimonial and put a couple of different random names on them. So what you suggested, I actually offer that to people as well, where I don't know them so well, or if it hasn't come from a referral, I do offer people the chance to have a chat with, and I give them 2 or 3 different clients that I'm happy for you to reach out to them. And those past clients have said to me, happy to have a conversation with anybody considering.
Yeah.
It is really about that trust, because coaching can get quite, I'm going to use the word intimate,
Yeah.
in a non-sexy way, but real intimacy is opening up, sharing, maybe revealing things that you haven't necessarily said out loud before. You maybe wouldn't talk to your friends and family about for many reasons. And so you want to be sure that this is the right person to embark on this journey with. And that's why that rapport building, due diligence, and that 10 out of 10 magic sprinkling on top, I think it paves the way for the ultimate transformations.
And I think as you're talking about that, it's almost taking it a level beyond just trust, because obviously that needs to be there,
Mm.
but it's finding the counterpart that gives you what you need that you're not getting from your friends and family, right?
Mm.
Where
Mm.
like a lot of the clients that are attracted to working with me, like that I'm able to give them a completely non-biased opinion on their situation. So a lot of the work is because I'm more on the strategic execution, where I know a lot of coaches work with like uncovering those internal blockers, figuring out what's blocking themselves from moving forwards. But then there are those other people who are like, I can handle that myself, but I need someone to help me figure out, how do I navigate this, or how do I make the right decision when I've got partners and friends and coworkers and bosses all telling me different things that I should, or air quotes, should or shouldn't be doing for my career right now. How do I cut through all that noise to make the right decision for me?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And having, whether it's that you need, or someone that you can trust to open up and be very vulnerable about what's going on with you or whatever it is, finding that 10 out of 10 coach on the flip side is also really, really critical, that you're finding someone who can offer you the exact type of support that is missing right now from keeping you from reaching those goals that you've got.
Mm-hmm. Such a good point. Such a good point. And linking that to the niche that we just discussed, picking who you're going to work with, what kind of person, not just personality, but situation, challenges, circumstances, and choosing that niche is really important. And
Mhm.
most coaches draw on a mixture of their training and their expertise. So we've both worked in corporate life. You say 20 years, which I'm not sure I believe, to be honest, 20 years, but you look far
I've
too
got a
young to
great
work
filter
anywhere.
on the recording.
You must have started when you were 6, Juliana. Mine is over a decade. And, so it's 30 years between us, 30 years of corporate experience between us. And the way that I'm trying to position myself now, and, the copy on my website is really honing in on, I've been on both sides of the table. That's how I phrased it, because I hope that makes sense to people. I've been the HR talent development leader in-house, running talent processes, putting people on leadership programs, looking at internal mobility, assessing leaders in-house.
Yeah.
And I've been a senior leader myself, working up those chains, trying to climb those ladders, right? Meeting those blockers and barriers. And I have both of that experience on both sides of the table, plus then, a master's in HR and my training as a coach and all the other things. And I weave all of that together. And that's why I've created the one-on-one program that I have, because from lifting from all of those experiences, I know what it takes.
Yeah.
I understand the imposter syndrome and the people pleasing and the, being pulled in a million different directions, because I've had those experiences. That's the combination. Obviously, you've got your own combination. So when looking for the right coach for you, what's the combination that you need?
Yes.
And I think it's getting really clear on that, and then going into those discovery calls to that's what they're for. They're there to meet the coach, try them out, ask your questions, but getting really clear on where do I think my issues are, what combination do I need, and more importantly, I don't think we've said this yet, the combination that I have is not for everyone.
No. And it's the
And
same for me,
and that's
right?
okay.
Like the type of person that I can help versus the type of person that Gabs can help, I think, even though to the point that you've made about we could hypothetically, just based on our training, based on our experience, we have the tool set we need to help anyone. But it's that I'll call it an accelerant of that
Mm,
magic combination of our training, our expertise, our on the job experience that that makes all of us coaches a little bit different and
mhm,
fits in a little bit differently with all the people out there looking for a coach. Because and I know Gabs, we've talked about how we both have a system whereby if we are approached by someone who isn't a 10 out of a 10 client for us, we would rather refer them to someone who we think is, at minimum, we'll say an 8 out of 10
yeah,
match,
yeah,
right? Somebody who's a much closer match so that they can be successful together than take on someone who we aren't confident are going to benefit from that unique flavor of coaching that we have to offer, right? And
100%,
it's
100%.
such a hard thing for us too, because remember, as independent business people, every client that we don't sign is an impact to the financial success of the business.
Hmm.
But it is so much more important for us, especially because people who are drawn to coaching are, as you've hinted at, people who want to help the world.
Hmm.
It's important that we're helping the right fit of person so that we can guarantee the best results for them rather than just taking on everyone. Because if that relationship wasn't really set up for success in the first place for multiple reasons,
Yeah,
the coachee is not going to get the results they want. We're going to be miserable because we're not seeing them successful. Nobody's happy.
it doesn't. It's like recruiting.
Yeah,
I'm sure you've recruited in your corporate
absolutely.
career. It's exactly the same. It's when you've been in this recruitment situation and you have the choice between just hiring someone or maybe going back out to recruit. I advise people, sometimes on a monthly basis, go back out to recruit to find the good fit that you're excited about.
Hmm.
Um, 9 times out of 10, it doesn't end well on either side. Nine
No.
times out of 10. And I think it takes a lot of strength, courage, patience, and integrity to turn down a paying client when you work for yourself.
Yeah.
When you're a solopreneur and every penny, I know you're in dollars, but every penny matters, you know, it does take a lot of integrity. But I think we are on the same page, and I want to build a healthy business, but a business that is built on my values and a business where my reputation is bulletproof because I've made decisions I can really stand behind. And ultimately, I want to do the right thing for the person in front of me. Can I actually tell you it? It's like slightly different, but a
Yep.
little sideline story where I had a discovery call and the person's situation and challenges was right in my sweet spot,
Hmm.
really, really good fit on that part. Um, but the actual individual was very closed
Yeah.
and was answering the question as briefly as possible with just enough information to answer the question, wasn't being expansive, was yeah, it was tricky. Let's just say that. I'm trying to be very tactful. which is not my strong suit, but trying to be tactful as I can. Very tricky to get the information that I need for a successful discovery call. And it was clear to me the work-related challenges had roots in more personal things. And this is not the first work environment where this individual had experienced those challenges. This was a little bit of a pattern. And as coaches, we love patterns because they tell us so much. And at the end of the discovery call, I felt almost a little bit sad because I thought, I can help you, but I'm not 100% sure that you want to be helped.
Mm-hmm.
I know that 10 out of 10 magic isn't there. I know that rapport isn't there based on how closed this individual was. And they asked me, I know we've only spoken for 30 minutes, but based on what I've told you, do you feel that you can help me? And I was really honest. And I said, yeah, I can help, but will you allow me to help? Will you let me in enough and drop your guard enough to allow me to come in and help? And that's where the issue is. The issue isn't with the challenges. I've got loads of tools to help with that, but that's what's missing from my perspective. And they thanked me for my honesty and said that they understood, and I never heard from them again. So, I think that 10 out of 10, concept that we're discussing, it is really important. And I think it can also be a wake-up call for people. How you think you're coming across isn't always how you're coming across. There can be messages lost in translation there.
Yeah, and I love that story because it kind of touches on something that I think is maybe a little bit heartbreaking for a lot of us as coaches, where there are a lot of people seeking help, but we can very quickly assess whether the person is actually ready for the transformation that they're looking for, right? The transformation that's needed to get them to those goals that have been just a little bit out of reach for so long, where I don't think I've had a discovery call like that, but I have had initial discussions with a lot of people who they don't quite know what the help is that they need, which is
yeah,
tricky situation, right? Because we can offer so many possible options for how we can help you get there, but I think if you're not even sure what it is that is the problem or the type of support you need at a very fundamental level, it's going to be challenging for you to find someone who can help you, right? Like going back to your car situation, if you don't even know what you need a technician to do for your car, assessing the person is going to be difficult. And it's tricky because a flat tire is obvious. The car not starting is obvious. But if there's just a rattling noise, which I've had a car that would just rattle, right? Trying to figure out who can help you unrattle the car is going to be really, really challenging, where it's almost like you need to take that leap and invest in some initial coaching with somebody who you can trust to just do the diagnosis, just to find out like what is that blocker. Maybe that's not the coach who's going to be able to help you, but to find out what is it that's holding you back, and then deciding from there, are you ready to make that change? Do you agree with the coach? Because maybe you don't. And if you do agree, then kind of going back to explore, what do I need to resolve that? I think back to when I was in corporate and was looking for a coach for myself, it was very clear for me what I needed. right? I needed somebody who um, had experience with workplace dynamics at the executive level and who could help me come into my own leadership style without telling me, oh, this is what you should do. This is what you should do based on like some sort of magical checklist of things or
Mhm.
suggest things that were uncomfortable for me. Where I know other people who are like, no, I want a coach who is going to push me
Mhm.
outside of my comfort zone. I need someone to make me uncomfortable. I know that's what I need for my growth. Right. So finding that right match again is just so critical. But if you don't know what you need, you're just going to be spending a lot of your own personal time talking to a bunch of coaches who are going to maybe incessantly follow up with you because we're so diligent. um, and you're not really going to get very far, right? Just as we as coaches need to understand who's the type of person that we can help the best.
Mm.
How can we work with them so that they can be successful? If you're out there looking for a coach, it's so important to know what you need.
I add something, another
Of course.
another challenge, I guess, or dynamic to this, because everything you said is so spot on. And to really know what you need takes a level of, like, we're moving away from the car analogy now, because with cars, I
Mhm.
don't know what's going on in there. I just sync my music to the Bluetooth and drive, whatever. Um, it takes a level of self-awareness and
Mhm.
insight. And I have also had a few conversations in the past where people are unaware of how interlinked things can be. So I've got a work issue and I need help with this work related challenge. And if I ask a question about, what's your family situation, or what was it like, at school, or how did you grow up? What does that have to do with it? This is a work related issue. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, some juicy resistance. Bring it
We
on.
found one.
We found it. And I think there is I think that's the whole, concept of personal development and personal growth, which everybody's had um varying levels of exposure to, varying levels of appetite to do it. There's nothing easy about personal growth. It's very challenging and very uncomfortable. And I have had a few conversations where I've had to sort of break that down and explain this challenge or issue that you're facing might be showing up primarily at work, but the roots of that challenge probably come from other areas, especially if it's a bit of a pattern. And I always say coaching is really good for something, um, to almost attack something that has been tripping you up for some time. I speak with people all the time where their people pleasing trips them up. Their lack of boundaries trips them up, gets them into problems, makes life more difficult, makes them feel frustrated, resentful. I'm like, that's great, but the lack of boundaries is probably not absolutely unique to the hours of 9 to 5 when you're working your corporate job. Probably going to show up in some other areas because we are one person all the time. And we've been encouraged, I think, I know we're getting deep now, but society wise and all these things, to think of ourselves as, I've got the work version of me and the
Mhm.
personal version of me and the family version of me and the gym version of me, when actually you are always one person. And sometimes the transformation comes from actually reintegrating those pieces and understanding they are interlinked. So for me to really help you beyond the surface level, so I operate at a level of depth. We might need the submarine for the transformation I like to take people on, because the surface level stuff, you can just Google that nowadays or get ChatGPT to give you a surface level answer. But the real transformation is when you need someone like me, like us, that has the, the physical experience, often from varying sides of the table, plus the training, plus the credentials that can bring that all together. That's when you get the real depth of transformation, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I maybe want to speak to the people out there who are still listening, but are wondering, okay, well, what does this mean for me if I either don't feel ready to do that deep work, or I'm not quite ready to believe it, that all these things are interconnected, but know that something needs to change. Where you mentioned being able to Google solutions and things like that. And that could be your first step towards growth, right? Maybe that first step is trying out the tactics without doing that, um, we'll call it scary work of introspection and like the deep exploration of self, to see if maybe is it a technical skill that you are missing, or a key piece of information that you don't have. If that resolves it, well, then fantastic. Right? You've made your progress. But if that doesn't, I think that's a good indication that the reason you're not reaching your goals, the reason that you're not getting past a certain point in your career, is not a technical one. And that for a lot of people, I think, can be um, very difficult to fully accept, even if you say you understand it, because sometimes as well, especially depending on the culture you come from,
Mhm.
um, we're taught that if you just do these things, if
Mhm.
you if you get these degrees, if you get these number of experiences, if you demonstrate these skill sets, you will be successful.
Oh, yeah.
But as we know, having been in corporate for so long, that is uh, fantasy, right?
Yeah.
It's not really how the world works, even though we say it is.
Mhm.
And there's always something else. For me, a lot of the times it comes down to interpersonal relationships, that
Mhm.
you need to know how to manage what is actually happening in the workplace to be able to get past those blockers. And coming back to what we've been saying the entire time, a lot of that takes internal work.
Mhm.
And maybe that's internal work you do on your own with a coach who can help you move forward, right? Because I know a lot of my clients are just, they're either so private or they are so introverted that they do a lot of that deep work themselves and come back to
Mhm.
me and say, hey, sorry, I haven't spoken to you in 2 weeks, but here's the introspection I've done. And here's the conclusion I've come to. What do I do with this?
Mhm.
Versus maybe you need someone to guide you through that process, like Gabs can, to kind of be your Sherpa through the process and figure out what is that what is that key thing that needs to be unraveled, so that I can integrate myself, like Gab said,
Mhm.
and become a better version of myself so I can get to those goals.
Ooh. I'm just, yeah, taking notes on what, you're hearing what you're saying. And yeah, that success measure checklist that we were all sold as children, and I know some of this is cultural, absolutely, as well. And I straddle two cultures, British and Caribbean. Those checklists are different across both
Yes.
cultures.
Yep.
And I think the checklists are outdated. You know, the rules, the rules of the game have changed. Some of those checklists were created by parents in the, I don't know, 40s, 50s, 60s. And things have changed and evolved so much that what we all thought, what I thought in my, I started working at 15, what I thought would equal success gets you to a certain point, but there are consequences and it doesn't get you to where you really want to go necessarily. And that's often where people want our help. Is it's such a cliche, I'm cringing even saying it out loud, but what got me here won't take me there. It's an old chestnut for a reason, but it is true. What got me to being a really good manager is not what will get me to being a really good leader or a really good C-suite or really good business owner. Things evolve. We evolve as people. We're supposed to. And yet, some of those patterns are really outdated. And often you do need a hand to look at that with a fresh pair of eyes, and some external perspective can be really helpful and really healthy, because we're all in our own heads all the time. So the way that we see the world is pretty similar all the time. And it can take, I'm sure we've both experienced that. One question that me as an external person that's not in your head and not in your friend circle and not in your family can ask you for the light bulb to go on. So you mentioned, to anyone listening, and if you're still listening at this point, thanks for sticking with us. Can I offer a couple of maybe reflection questions to the audience? If you are still with us and thinking, I still don't know if I need a coach or not, but I have a thing, I have this challenge, I've got this issue, I've got this problem, I've got this thing that trips me up. Here's where I would start. And I would take, I don't know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes quietly on your own with no distractions, and really jot down, some notes on these maybe 2 or 3 questions and see what the outcome is. So the first one would be, how long really has this issue been hanging around? And sometimes that can be a wake-up call when you subtract that number from your age and you realize it's actually quite a bit longer than you think. And, really cast your mind back. When did this start? The second one is a huge one. When I say, okay, this issue, let's say it's people pleasing or procrastination, whatever it is, what is it really costing you? What does that issue cost you? And again, go beyond the surface level. Because, it's a bit frustrating or it's holding me back. Okay, great. What's the next level down? Is it impacting your relationships, your finances, how you feel about yourself? Does it impact your hopes for the future? Does it mean that you talk yourself out of doing different things? What is it really costing you? And then the third one, which I think is the best one, if I have to have a favorite, is, what happens if you do nothing? Cast your mind forward 12 months down the line, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line. If you do nothing about this issue, get no help, read no books, no chat GPT, if you do absolutely nothing about this and it continues, what happens to your life? What happens to you? And I would hope that maybe the outcomes of those 3 questions can give you a sense of whether you're ready to get a hand with it and get some help with it to change and speed. Like you said, we as coaches can act as an accelerant. What might take you 25 years of on again, off again reflection and trial and error, maybe we can cut that down to, I don't know, 3 months, 8 sessions, because you're benefiting from us as that external perspective, plus our expertise, plus our training. Let's see if we can speed that up for you and cut down that number. So if you're in that situation, that's where I would start.
Yeah, and I would offer maybe 3 different questions to kind of take that from a different angle of, are you even ready for working with a coach right now? Which I think it's similar, but it's slightly different, where
Yeah.
maybe you need a coach, but are you in a position where you're ready? And I would say the first question, because I actually come across this quite a bit in my initial conversations with people who are looking for a coach, is, are you at the point where you're willing to accept a different perspective than your own? Because
Love it.
I have to say, I have a lot of people who are coming to me who I think are looking for someone with experience to validate their frustration, but that's it. And I'm not saying the validation of frustration isn't important, because that's part of the rapport, that trust of, yes, your situation is not good, but if you're not willing to accept that there's something, a different way to look at your situation. And the second question of, are you willing to try something different to get out of your situation? If those aren't options for you right now, if you're in a spot where you just need only validation, honestly, you're not ready, and no amount of money that you throw at this problem, whether it's through a coach, whether it's through training, it's not going to help you. Just don't spend the money.
Wow.
And then the third question is, are you ready to make this a priority? Because I've had that as well, where a lot of people are like, yes, something needs to change. I can see that if I don't make a change, I'm going to be stuck here in this job I hate forever. Um, but are you ready, both um, internally and from a logistical perspective, to make this a priority? Because if you've got a lot going on with your family right now, or if your finances aren't in a situation where you can afford this, or a whole host of other totally legitimate reasons for why your career isn't your priority in this exact moment,
Mhm,
again, you're not going to find success because you're not fully there, right? Because
mhm,
you're always going to be thinking about something else. Um, and it's maybe not the right time right now, but at some point you will be ready. And that's a much better time to do this exploration, when you can be all in. Because otherwise, you're going to try a few things and then you're going to get discouraged. And then oftentimes, what I've seen is people give up on the concept of coaching or the concept of finding help because it wasn't the right time for them anyway.
mhm, mhm,
Right. And then they get discouraged, and the next time they feel they might be ready, instead of doing that assessment to say, hey, am I ready? Is this the right time? It's, oh, well, I've tried this before, it didn't work, so uh, I'm doomed.
And I would say such good questions. I mean, I've written those down. Um, all of that feeds into, again, in my opinion, part of that 10 out of 10 magic. It's the right fit with the right person at the right time, when you've either got enough leverage to change, you're in enough pain. And I don't mean that physically, but there's enough, it's costing you enough that you're like, I'm ready to tackle this now. But also, I'm ready to give it the time and attention that it deserves. I'm ready to do
And
the
that is
reflection.
so
Yeah.
important, because maybe it's okay for your career not to be a priority right now. Like, this is coming from two career coaches,
Hmm.
right? Like, maybe this isn't the right time, and that's
Hmm.
okay. You're allowed to have shifting priorities, and for other things to take priority at different times. It doesn't mean that your career is not important, but when it does become that time for it to be the most important thing, or one of the most important things for you to focus on,
Hmm.
finding that right match is going to make such a big difference, compared to finding someone who is making promises, but you've got that inkling of maybe there's something a little bit off, or
Hmm.
someone who you think you really want to work with, but when you try to work with them even before you've committed, it's
Hmm.
not comfortable. Like, we're both cringing here right now, because we know from our side it's the same, where, yeah, we want to help anyone who comes through our door, but if that fit isn't there, that's just not going to be good.
Yeah, it's a no-go. And I think that also comes down to our due diligence as coaches and integrity to
Mhm.
ask the question and say, I'd love to help you and we're a great fit, but is now the right time?
Yeah.
And I think there is probably an element of that as well. Ultimately, it's the coachee's decision, but there is an element there where I would really hesitate and be really checking in on the time and space. So one of the things I ask people in my discovery calls is, why now?
Yeah.
Why now? Why are we jumping into this? What's making people in? And how ready are you? Which comes back to the prioritizing and the amount of time and energy that you have to devote to this. And I think sometimes it's more than people expect. It's not reams of homework and writing essays or anything like that, but it is reflection. Right, we've discussed a particular action that you could take. By next week, I want you to try that out. And part of next week's session is you reporting back to me on how that went. There is accountability and action involved. It's not a cup of tea and sympathy. It is action orientated, because my goal is the transformation that you want.
Yes.
My goal is the change that you want. I want things to be different, feel different, look different, think different. There needs to be some kind of change. It should be noticeable to you and the people around you if we're doing it right. So we can't get there if you do nothing, or worse, do the bare minimum.
Yeah.
I think sometimes that's worse than people that do nothing. And thankfully, I haven't actually experienced that yet. So I must filter people in and out, decently. But I'm very upfront of, like, especially on my signature one-on-one program, like, we're going to be working together for 4 months. Like, buckle up, settle in, because I'm along with you and I'm doing just as much work as you are to guide that journey. And again, I don't know about you, Julianna, but this is why I limit the amount of one-on-ones I have at a period of time, because I'm thinking about my clients a lot.
Constantly.
I just want to stress, in a non-creepy way. I'm thinking about my clients a lot. If I come across an article, I think, oh, that's perfect for client X. If I see a job role, I think, oh, that'd be really interesting data for client W. And I am saving it, sending it, checking in. It is a lot of our energy, but also my care and my commitment and my dedication as well, that I can't spread that too thin, because the quality will drop. And, I do pride myself on the quality being high. So there's all of those things to consider. And I think all of them play a part in that 10 out of 10 magical seasoning. Yeah, magical seasoning in a discovery call. And I would also say, if this is all new to anyone listening and you haven't experienced the 10 out of 10 feeling yet, you will know it when you have it. And the way I would describe it, and I'd love to hear your version, Julianna, the way I would describe it is, people get a mixture of excitement, and I've had some people almost laugh out loud with how excited they feel to get going. There's almost that, I've had people say, can we not just do the first session now? Off the back of that, like, you're itching to get started. You want to jump in with both feet. You've got no hesitations. And then I also have sometimes the calls, we get to the end and people say, do you know, that was only 30 minutes, but I feel so much better already. I feel reassured already. I've had people get a little bit tearful saying, I feel really understood just from that initial 30 minutes. So it's a yes. What are the next steps? Let's get the contract signed. Let's get the PO sorted. I want to get going. It can be that real blend of excitement, but also kind of relief. Like, oh, someone gets it. I feel like you understand me. And that's how it is for clients. And then from my side, I get goosebumps. It's so weird, but every time I get goosebumps, and that's the little, like, oh yeah, that's a 10 out of 10 for me. And then I'm excited to get started too. How does it show up for you, Julianna, that 10 out of 10? What does it feel like?
I think the excitement is definitely the common denominator, right? Because if you can't get excited about the work it's not a 10 out of 10.
Hmm.
So that immediate feeling of maybe a little bit of hope, a little bit of excitement, and for the type of person I typically work with, okay, let's get started. How do we do this?
Hmm.
Right? Maybe not necessarily let's have the first meeting right away, but like let's get this train
Yeah.
chugging. What do we need to do to make this happen?
Hmm.
I think if you're not thinking in those terms, you probably have some sort of hesitation either about the coach or the process or your own readiness that it's not going to happen. Like
Hmm.
I know fairly quickly when I'm talking to someone if they're ready
Hmm.
because of the way they're answering me, whether it's through messaging or we're on a call. It's very apparent for me that they're not ready, that they're exploring, they're trying to understand what this coaching thing is all about,
Hmm.
what is it that they can help them with, but they don't, to my point earlier, if they don't know what it is that they need, that's going to be really hard for us as coaches to match up to say, hey, I'm hearing that this is what you need. This is either what exactly I can do for you, or here's another coach who might be more suited for your situation.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I
Ooh.
hope that's helpful for people listening. What does it feel like? So you always have that map, I think is helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this was such a fun conversation, very different than our usual one. So I hope anyone out there who's looking for a coach or considering one, this has been helpful in kind of thinking through and imagining what it might be, imagining whether you are ready for that step right now, because as we talked about, not always the right time. Um, and I guess, Gabs, any final thoughts or one key thing that you'd love people to take away from all of this, if they were just to take away one thing?
Just one.
Just
Um,
one.
I would say I would say that clarity and that due diligence that we've talked about is really
Mhm.
key. And know from our side, when you're doing your homework on your coach, we have spent hours, if not weeks, if not months, writing the copy that is on our LinkedIn profiles, on our website, to describe ourselves and how we do what we do. There is so much work that goes into trying to articulate that. I would say take it seriously. That we do what we do. We've designed the programs or services that we have for a reason. And we're confident enough to put it out to market on the internet and boldly say, this is what I do and this is how I do it and this is who I do it for. And we are able to do that because we're confident in it. And so I would really use that information for your due diligence, to do your homework, to get started, and let's come together and move away from this. Well, a coach is a coach is a coach. We all have different flavors that make us that quite unique combination. Um, and use that to make your choices. I'm going to sneak in a tiny one. I would just say book a discovery call when in doubt, because that's what they're for. They are no obligation. It's 30 minutes of your time. It's worth doing and shopping around, but utilize them. That's what they're there for. They're no commitment. It's nothing scary, but you won't really know until you have a chat with someone. So yeah, that would be my parting thoughts. Sorry to sneak in a second one, but I had to.
Yeah, and maybe I'll leave things off with a similar thought, which is, I guess, going back to sort of the overarching point we've been making with it, there are so many different coaches out there, and it really is up to you to find the right one that will meet your needs. And if it's not the right match, just don't. Just don't. Um,
Keep searching. Don't
keep
give up.
searching.
Just keep
And
searching.
honestly, if you're working with someone who's trying to do a hard sell, who's trying to
Mm,
um say that they can help you no matter what, maybe a little bit of a warning sign because most of us know who we can help the best and are in it for the transformation, the result that you're going to get, not necessarily just getting your dollars or sterlings or
Mhm,
whatever's, right? Like for us, this is not obviously it is about the money at a certain point, but it's
mhm,
about more than that. Where if we aren't confident that we can help you, we'd much rather see you serviced by somebody who can.
mhm,
And if it's not the right time, we'd much rather you wait it out
mhm,
than jump into something that isn't going to get you the result you want.
mhm. Perfectly said. Agree wholeheartedly.
All right, so we will wrap things up there, and obviously check the show notes for how to get in touch with either of us or both of us. If you have more questions about looking for a coach, or if you want to chat to us about coaching, again, if we don't think you're a great fit for us, or vice versa, we both have extensive networks and are happy to put you in touch with somebody who can get you where you want to be. So we're not scary people, just reach out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Julianne. Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you. It's a lot of fun. Okay. Well, thanks for listening, everyone, and hanging in to the very end, and we will see you next time.
See you next time.